Last conversations. I was going to say no pressure. We're the last two of the day, but again, like I said, you saved some great brands for last. So we're going to pivot a little bit. We just talked about in-person experiences with Legos and physical items, and now we're going to talk about esports and gaming and something that only really exists in the digital world, which is really, really exciting.
Yeah, we'll cover how we're online and trying to get into in real life, which is a bit of an opposite conversation, but let's get into it.
Awesome. Yeah. So welcome. So Kristin, before we dive in, you're in a very evolving, fast-moving space right now, but your background in media and marketing was very traditional. So tell us a little bit about where you started and how you got to where you are now as your role of the VP of Marketing.
Yeah, absolutely. So currently I oversee our global marketing efforts for our esports business at Activision Blizzard. Who's heard of esports or somewhat familiar? All right, great. This increases every single time. I feel like as the months and years go on. So fantastic. I did start in the traditional space. I started in advertising, J. Walter Thompson, and account management on the Johnson & Johnson brand. So that, felt like a whole different world ago, over 15 years, when we were focusing on TVC, just TV commercial development, getting our hands a little bit, kind of into digital marketing and advertising, but not to the degree that we do it today. So really, since I left that traditional media world, I forayed into the world of entertainment, which was in traditional professional sports. I was with the New York Jets and the Baltimore Ravens for a lot of my career. And then as just the future of entertainment continued to evolve, it was about almost 6 years ago that Blizzard was doubling down on its esports efforts. The industry has been around for over 20 years, but really increasing those efforts. And that's when I joined Activision Blizzard to lead our marketing, social media, content, and digital efforts for our esports business. Very different over the last 15 years, just given everything that's happened in the social media space. And also given, we'll talk about the target audience a little bit later, but our average fan is 25 years old. 90% of our fan base is under the age of 35. Very different marketing towards that online esports community versus when I was selling Listerine mouthwash, which still love the same commercials that they're playing this day. So definitely a bit of a transformation over the last 15 years.
Very cool. What an awesome path to get where you were in real life sports to now into esports. So I know half of you raised your hands when you said you know what esports is, you've heard of esports. So I think maybe let's dumb it down to the basics. How do you define esports, and where is the niche that Activision Blizzard sits within the video game space as well as the esports space?
Yeah, so everyone understands video gaming. That's not new. I'm sure many of us in this room grew up playing some sort of video game, or maybe even you're doing some kind of mobile game to this day. So the space isn't new by any stretch, but for the last few years, with the increase of social media, digital streaming, and the ability to watch in different formats, in came what's called streaming, which I'm sure a lot of you have heard of. Someone named Ninja before, who streams Fortnite, one of the biggest streamers in the world. That is watching other people play video games. That is separate from esports, so those often get confused. It's a part of the industry, an important part of our influencer marketing strategy. But esports particularly is competitive video gaming. So if you think about just any kind of professional sports where you're playing for money, you're playing for fame, you're playing for a title, you have a team, there's strategy, there's coaches, GMs, things of that nature. That is exactly what we're doing on the competitive video game space. The biggest player in the industry is led by Riot. League of Legends has been, for the last decade, really leading the way. Blizzard did help invent the industry 20 years ago with StarCraft 2, so we kind of claim to that. But we don't see Riot as a competitor. We're embracing of the entire esports industry of kind of everyone to bring up this new, next wave of entertainment and traditional sports. But we took a slightly different approach than any of our other competitors. So Riot being a big one, EA Sports is another big one in the space. We took the approach of replicating what has been done in traditional professional sports. Meaning, if you look at the NBA, NFL, there are team owners who own city-based teams that compete against each other, and they build upon that hometown rivalry and that pride that you get of being part of a community in the city in which you live, the country in which you live, whatever scale it's on. So we replicated that model. We were the first and only to do that. We started that with the Overwatch League 5 years ago. Now we're doing that with a Call of Duty League. So we have properties based on the game Overwatch and the game Call of Duty, which most of people have at least heard of Call of Duty before. Pretty massive game. And we compete in season into playoffs and finals, just like you would imagine in traditional pro sports. And it is global, but it's city-based. So that goes into a bit of our communication strategy. I operate on the league side, if you will. So imagine I work for the NFL, and we have teams and marketing teams and local teams carrying out the team initiatives that happen in market and in those particular regions.
Wow, what an incredible and complex ecosystem. I know some of this was new to me as not a big gamer, but it's really incredible what you guys have built here too. So thinking about that community, loyal fan base, how are you creating content specifically for them, and how are you fostering these audiences?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, the audience is average age 25. We live online. They're playing online. They're watching online. We've transitioned between either live streaming. It's a good thing I'm a loud talker.
Turn up the mics.
I know, and the microphone's up. Yeah, I'm the last thing standing between all of that, so fully understand and support.
Always the gamers.
Yeah, always. So we've transitioned between being live streaming on Twitch and YouTube. Those are the two biggest platforms that can bring esports and gaming live. But we live online, so when we think about communities, they're digital communities, which was really unique for us, particularly the past few years, as so many companies were transitioning their in real life experiences because of the pandemic. We were able to continue all of our operations and really even further the bonds of that community, because we had an outlet to provide that we didn't have to change at all. While everyone was staying safe at home, they were able to watch our esports. In fact, we took a 2-week hiatus during that time because our players do compete together to just figure out those operations. And then we continued with our live sports and brought the communities together. So we think about things like digital cheering. How do you cheer in your team, when you're watching from your mobile or on your desktop? To viewership incentives is huge for us. So people will go on and try and get rewards that they can use in-game. And we've done digital watch parties. So you can be a fan of the Boston team together, in a Discord server, which is big for us for community engagement, and chat with fans through these digital communities. To your point of Lego, where they're trying to go digital, we are also trying to complement it in real life. So I think everyone could agree, when you go to a live sporting event or concert, there is nothing like that atmosphere. So we still very much celebrate that in real life experience. We were just in Anaheim for our grand finals for the Overwatch League. We had 5,000 fans there. And that's when we used kind of the in-person community experience to bring all those fans together and kind of cheer. But for the most part, we're thinking about it from a digital standpoint.
Awesome. So reaching those communities through media, what are some of the tactics that your team works on, and what are some of the things that you found successful and maybe had to pivot as your brand evolves and as the brand story evolves?
Yeah, absolutely. So media has been an important part of our holistic marketing campaign and approach, and it still continues to be, given that our communities live online and given that we have so much access to data. So I'd say there's probably a couple unique things. So first of all, when we think about our media strategy, we own all the first-party data of who are playing the video games. And as you would probably think about who our core targets are, the primary core target are those that play the video game and have an interest in competitive sport, esports. So we're able to look at all that proprietary data through our very robust, sophisticated, beyond my probably full understanding, this is why we have media experts in this field, to be able to tap into that first-party data network, look at who's playing versus who's also watching, and target them directly via digital and social buys. We've learned over the years that there needs to be more context in the gaming and esports space to target even that core audience, but most certainly a casual audience better. So a static banner ad does not work to provide enough context and enough information. So we've fully at this point pretty much transitioned to video, all videos in our media buy to just provide enough, even if it is a 6-second video, just enough information so they understand what you're trying to communicate. Especially, again, we do this both for our gaming and our esports media buy, but the esports adds a whole nother layer into it because you're trying to communicate the game that they're playing, the esport, the team, maybe the pro players, the date, the time. There's just a lot to communicate. And then on top of that, what we've really transitioned this past 2 years is supporting our content through our paid media. So we've pulled back a little bit on how much we are pushing live tune-in. So if you think about a league structure, the NFL, NBA, they're telling you when and where to watch, right? That's some of their main advertising efforts. We're very similar. We're telling you when and where to watch, what teams to watch. Hopefully we're using some kind of creative storyline to say, oh, watch this star player battle this star player who is going to be crowned victor. But we've advanced past that to try and just use more captivating video to gain interest. For too long, we were going to the bottom of the funnel and trying to drive viewership, and we've taken a step back and recognize that we need to get that engagement first, the just general interest and intent to watch, and so that's best done through content. And on top of that, in specific, when we think about content, because we are supporting all of our content across social and digital, but we've been specifically targeting our VOD content on YouTube and driving people to check that out, which in turn helps our algorithm on YouTube, which in turn increases the subscribers that we have on YouTube, which then in turn helps our viewership because then they get the notification of when our matches are live. So right now we're distributing exclusively on YouTube, but if we were on Twitch, we'd likely have a similar strategy. And YouTube inherently is not a live program. Putting YouTube TV aside, when you're looking at squarely YouTube, it is still very much a VOD platform. So in order for our live content to be seen on YouTube, we have to kind of go in through the VOD strategy. And we just completed and I don't have the results, so I can't fully talk data, but we just completed a brand study to understand the effectiveness of that advertising. And we did see a significant increase in intent to watch after people saw the video content that drove them to check out our VOD content on YouTube. So that's really exciting for us.
Yeah, that's awesome. Excited to see the results once you have them. So for your target audience, I know a couple of new friends in the back, we were talking about how, the original gamers are now 70, 80 years old. You're saying your target audience is much younger. What data are you using? I mean, I know you have a lot of the first party data to identify who the audience is now and who they're going to be years from now. Are they going to age with the sport, or are you going to continue to kind of play in this same age range?
Yeah, so that's a great question considering we're only 5 years in on the Overwatch League and only 3 years in the Call of Duty League side. But interesting enough, we do see our age ranges somewhat stay consistent as the new game IP comes out. That being said, as an esport, we are completely dependent on the new game IP coming out. So when we look at the Overwatch side, this is just the second iteration of Overwatch since our existence, whereas Call of Duty, there's been a new title that's come out every year, which is as that gets launched at this time every single year, October, November timeframe, there's a reinvigoration in the community. There's more players, there's new audience that come into the fold, which helps us build our audience and our community off of that. When you have a game that is decreasing in popularity, that becomes a lot more difficult. So the pipeline is filled through our new game, but if and when that doesn't happen, it can definitely be a challenge. So I think we need a little bit more time to understand just hoping that the influx of new players as they come into the game will continue to watch with us. And then we also capture them on the other side, which is interesting. So esports is more of a laid-back experience where gaming, particularly if you want to be competitive at gaming or, be able to kind of hang with the rest of the community, you have to put a lot of hours into it. It's really time-consuming. It's not, I mean, I play a little bit of Candy Crush, which was one of our games. That's like a 5-minute experience. This is hours. And so we are finding also that as some of our communities age out, particularly older millennials, age out of playing Call of Duty, they're going to come watch the Call of Duty League because they want to see these pro players who are incredible at what, playing the game, and they're entertained by that. So it's kind of interesting that we capture them at also kind of the post-playing time, but our audience strategy is really dependent on the game itself.
Yeah, it really is an entertainment company versus, gaming when you're looking at it from that angle. Which
yeah,
really
and that's what you all just talked about. And I said, I kind of laughed because I wondered, is every company trying to become an entertainment company? That's what we're striving for. I think it's kind of where we're going to.
Yeah. So tell me about the team that you have behind you and supporting you. I know your team is very integrated in terms of the way you approach media marketing. Who's involved in these decisions?
Yeah. Everyone. I don't know if that was the unanimous kind of consensus today, but so we are unique. We do our media buying in-house, and it is centralized under all of Blizzard. So really helps us because, to the point, they know the game data inside out. They know the gaming audience inside out. The esports is a cohort of that, and we're able to use all of their analysis and research to be able to leverage that for our media buying, which is fantastic. The marketing team, though, centralizes the strategy and the goals and the KPIs. And then, of course, we have to also work with the game marketing team to ensure that we're not cannibalizing each other, and that, their efforts, particularly, I'm sure not a single person missed the Modern Warfare 2 marketing blitz over the last couple of weeks. You could not turn on TV or go to Times Square or wherever you were without seeing a billboard. So we wouldn't be able to have enough presence without the full collaboration. So we ensure that we are in close partnership with them. And then, as I also mentioned, because we're the league side, we're also collaborating with the teams because we're doing the global marketing, but the teams are then supporting the marketing content at the community level, at the city-based level. So it's a big collaborative effort.
Lots of parties involved. So one interesting thing that you said, you have a ton of data, a ton of first-party data. In speaking with James earlier, he said, we know what we know and we don't know what we don't know. So we rely on a lot of our partners. In his case, it was Walmart to teach them about the consumer. Do you have relationships with any of your third-party partners that you bring into some of your strategy to media and marketing?
Yeah, I would say absolutely. I mean, we do have an entire kind of sponsorship side, right, where we're working on cross-collaborative campaigns with big sponsors of our league, which helps, just broaden our audience, which is important for us. But so much of our audience is in lockstep with the audience on social and digital. So we are using a lot of that insight. And as we're building our audience on social media, particularly on Twitter, actually still remains one of our top channels. Interesting enough, Instagram doesn't perform that high for us. And we just recently launched on TikTok. Finally got over all the hurdles of the regulatory parameters that we had to follow. So we use a lot of that data to inform our media buying and also the content that we're creating. And we look at those metrics incredibly closely, as well as everything on YouTube. YouTube is definitely driving a lot of our strategy, and we use that to inform what we're doing. And then lastly, our biggest partners, if you will, are the media rights side of it. So right now it's YouTube. Should we ever transition back to Twitch, we're going to be looking at that data very closely to inform our decision making.
Awesome. So for the in-house model, how did you and your team build out this team and understand, okay, what are the stakeholders that we need in place, and how do we build this? I know a lot of marketers are looking to either move that way or have explored moving that way. Curious how you guys approached it.
Yeah, so the interesting thing about the esports business is we have our own entity, but then we're also able to borrow resources across Activision Blizzard. So technically we're the startup, but we're housed within a Fortune 100 company. So it's quite amazing to have all those resources at our fingertips. So Blizzard embarked upon the journey about 7 years ago now to bring all of this in-house, and it was very slow and methodical because, as you would imagine, it's a huge undertaking. So they started with a small strategy team and outsourced all of execution, and then they slowly started to build that out further and then support more IPs and brands across the company. So it was very slow. It was North America based at first. They focused on North America for 2 to 3 years. So when we first started, we did our in-house media buying for North America, but when we worked globally with the regions, particularly in Europe, Korea, and China, we worked with agencies there. We've then since then, particularly because we focus on digital and social, it makes us easier to scale globally. We've been able to add Europe and Korea into our internal strategy, and they've expanded the execution activation team to be able to support it. But it definitely, took about 4 years for them to build out those capabilities fully internally.
What would you say is one thing you wish you knew now that you or you wish you knew 4 years ago that you know now in embarking on this kind of in-house journey?
Planning ahead. I think that's been the hardest part, is just we've had problems when the different franchises all need similar activations and buys at the same time. And on the esports side, we tend to be very agile, as I like to call it, and scrappy. So planning ahead is not as much in our wheelhouse, which is why the content world is in our wheelhouse, because you have to turn things around in a matter of hours. So I think just getting a better roadmap of the timeline and how much would be hitting at once would be helpful, because it inhibited sometimes of what we were able to do. If there was too much going on and not enough bandwidth, we didn't do it as opposed to outsourcing it. So we should have had probably a plan B of when we hit bandwidth, who are we outsourcing it to?
Great lesson. And then in terms of your team being global, so how do you streamline communication strategies across these different global markets? And what are some key takeaways in terms of where you need to be different for global markets?
Yeah, so we maintain strategy at HQ in North America. However, particularly if you look on the Overwatch League side, what we're doing in Asia is more than 50% of our efforts, because it's more than 50% of our viewership. And what we're doing in China is very different from what we're doing in Korea. So in Korea, we're actually able to just localize the North America content that we're creating and marketing assets. In China, we have built a completely new strategy off of the global strategy, and then we shift in certain areas that just don't make sense or won't kind of add up to the community. So even things like we walked away from our website in China because everything is communicated via Weibo and WeChat, so we didn't need a website. So we've made just market shifts where the communication just, is received differently by the community, by the fandom. So we've tried to go beyond just the localization and really regionalize what will work better. It also helps that we have these teams in market. So in those areas, we also just rely more heavily on the teams to lead the marketing efforts, the events, the content, and we just leverage the content that they're creating because it's perfectly on brand and on community, and so we just give that more of a spotlight than perhaps we would do in North America.
For some of these more local teams, where do you get that real-time feedback from the teams? And this is the strategy, and this is how we need to be speaking to our audiences. What kind of data do you bring into that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that has been perhaps the blessing of just Blizzard has always been a global company. So we've had the understanding of how to share that in real time, and all of the teams are cross-collaborative. So not just marketing, not just media, not just creative. Every team works collaborative with their counterparts in the global office. And so that system existed, and we just leveraged that, which is great. A lot of slacking to just share the information, and so just trying to kind of keep on top of that. It helped when we were able to take our efforts in North America and leverage them in Korea and Europe, because it cut down on how many different variances we were getting in.
Awesome. And as we look to next year, what should we be on the lookout for in terms of new things that you and your brand are innovating on and getting exciting for?
Yeah, in the midst of that 2023 planning, I don't know if anyone's feeling that right now, going into the holidays of, oh my gosh, there's so much to accomplish in the next 6 weeks. But the further of digital integration. So we were just at this in real life event I mentioned. We did this awesome digital scavenger hunt where fans in attendance got rewards that they could then claim digitally. There's so much more that we can advance there as we're pulling in automation and machine learning into not just those digital experiences, but also the stats experience. So for those that kind of know the future of sports, that's going into AI and AR and how you're layering in all that stats and information. We're trying to test that out a bit further. So when you're watching our live esports, you're getting that kind of similar data. And then what that can do to kind of unlock further experiences like fantasy products that just deepen the relationship with the fan. So that really excites me. And then everything that we're doing on the content side, the wars of content and social just keep heating up. So the fact that we just got access to our own TikTok channels within the last couple of weeks, and the growth has been insane of, we're getting tens and thousands of fans at a time. Even on YouTube, we grew 500,000 fans in the last 3 months on our YouTube channel for the Overwatch League. So just capitalizing on that growth and testing the content that we're putting on it also really excites me.
Awesome. Well, I'm so excited to see where the brand goes and continues to evolve. Let's open it up for questions.
You talked about YouTube being video on demand. What's amazing to me is where you watch, there's videos of the games with somebody else doing play-by-play narrating it, and then a room full of kids watching it. I mean, it's just unbelievable, that aspect of it. It's the game behind the game.
Yeah. Well, and what you're even referring to is this idea of co-streaming, where, so what exists is that you're watching commentary and there are live audience behind that. Then there's additional co-streaming, which are influencers taking that feed and adding their own commentary, which esports has been doing for a while. And I love that I'm now watching the NFL and I'm seeing, the Manning brothers are doing co-streaming, and I love that I'm seeing everything that we've been doing on esports for years penetrate into the traditional entertainment and sports market. But yeah, it is quite fascinating how that's growing.
Yep. I totally agree. And I love the Manning episode where they were giving Obama a hard time about his quarter zip. They did a whole quarter zip thing. I think we have one question and we're going to wrap.
You mentioned the success of an upcoming campaign that you can't really share the details with. What is the brand lift study? Is it a Google brand lift study? Is it a third partner? Like, who do you guys use to measure brand lift or purchase intent or awareness?
Yeah, so we that was particularly for YouTube, and I'd have to find the exact partner, but we did a Google intent survey as well. Those are the results. I don't have those results back, but we did a search lift study, nice. And we the initial results are showing that our searches did increase as we were serving those videos. So that was the first time we had actually done a Google search study.
So I just want and with your whether it be your guys' YouTube channel, posting things there, or even advertising across YouTube, how do you guys handle brand safety and like in the comment sections and especially within that age group, it can get pretty racy or rough?
Yeah, absolutely. We have an entire dedicated chat moderation team that are temp workers that are fully part of my team. There's 10 of them that moderate the chats, and then we have some global counterparts as well, because we have things happening at all hours of the night because of the global competition. So we contract those individuals, and they are young community members that manage the chat, but it's incredibly, as you imagine, our legal team would not allow us to not employ them. So it's a critical part of our online strategy.
No more questions. So I think we're wrapping. Mark, you and I had spent some time, you had asked me if we could get into a different space, and I know we couldn't get into it. And besides lunch sort of becoming an early bird dinner for some today, I will tell you, like, this intimate space was great. I mean, the conversations that we had, I learned so much, and the brands that we had, the moderators that we had, it was just an amazing day. So